When you're sharing a business message, sometimes the quickest way to get from point A to point B is not to have a straight line. What we're going to talk about today is how to tell it to them crooked, how to take your listeners on a journey that builds in story and humanizes the facts you want to share so that you make the impression you want and you're able to make the call to action that you want after people really understand what it is you're trying to do. And today, for our monthly Founders Live Influencer series, we're back at Atlas Workbase, and I'm pleased to be joined by my good friend, Brad Cochran. Brad's the author of Story First Marketing, Move Your Customers to Action, and the workbook, The 5 Storylines, that can help you build your stories so that you can engage your audiences. Brad, great to see you.
Good to see you, Bryan.
It's always fun to get together with you and be able to talk about communicating and storytelling and actually getting an audience to feel some connection with the speaker who's on stage.
Oh, I love it, because the thing about storytelling, and the reason I champion it, is because it's a real opportunity to change how people think, feel, but most importantly, act. And that's so important in business, not to just tell people a bunch of facts and features and benefits about this, but how stories can be used to really bring somebody inside of your product.
So now you're anticipating what my first question was going to be, right? We've been hearing about storytelling 5-6 years. It's been like the buzzword in business. If you're communicating, you have to tell a story. Why? What's the big deal? Why is it the case that everybody's talking about telling stories?
Unfortunately, Bryan, it has become a buzzword. And anytime something becomes a buzzword, people lose sight of the fact of what it really is.
Yeah.
So you get into a lot of situations where people are telling stories that don't really connect with people and then get very disappointed that, oh, well, I told a story, it should work. A story gets inside of you. If a story is told properly, you identify with the hero and you become part of that story. And most importantly, if your product is the solution within that story and people want completion, they want their stories to finish, then their stories need to be completed only with your product.
And is it the same whether you're talking about a product or a service or a change initiative?
It's all the same. Everything is a product. An idea is a product, a service is a product is a product. Most importantly, really ideas are the big products. That's really where you're changing people.
So when my team and I at 3C Communications
Yes.
talk with a client about how to make a connection with the audience, whether we're talking about in-person presentation, or we're doing writing for a website, or we're researching and writing a success story, we're always talking about the value of telling a story and creating some emotional connection, because that's what drives action, as you were saying.
Right.
When you're looking to build a top-notch story, how do you do that?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that if you tell somebody a fact, you trigger the left part of their brain.
Okay.
You trigger 2 parts of the brain. If you tell somebody a story, an aspirational story that they can get involved in, that they can smell, they can touch, they can experience, you trigger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts of the brain. Now, if you want to influence somebody, would you rather lead with facts or a story?
Brad, I get that, and we've seen that statistic that stories will light up 7 parts of the brain, whereas the facts alone will only do 2. What's happening there? What's going on with the brain when a story gets...
Well, not a lot of people realize that the brain loves a good, healthy workout. It's like taking a good, healthy jog in the morning and you feel really great. So a story is a way of giving the brain a nice, healthy workout, with giving it some facts, giving it some mystery, giving it some senses. Imagine yourself running in the morning with the birds chirping and all of this kind of stuff, and you can see already that your brain is getting a nice, healthy workout. And that's the power of stories. People want to be engaged. People want completion.
Well, I imagine you're making the brain work a little harder sometimes with the story too, because if you're just giving me a set of facts, I've got to listen to each new fact and find some way to put that into a context. When you're telling me a story, sometimes I can see ahead to where you're going and I can anticipate, and that's my brain actually engaging with what you're saying up on the stage or in front of the room.
Absolutely. Who doesn't love a good mystery?
Okay, and lead with, so you get the story out first?
You get the story out first. Because if you lead with facts, it triggers the left part of the brain, which is all about sorting, And let me ask you a question. Do you not get enough emails in any single day? Do you not get enough advertising at you?
I'm good,
It's-
thanks.
Okay, you're good, because I'll put you on my mailing list. But there's so much clutter out there that the brain is really good at just sorting, saying no, 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 well, maybe, no, no, no. The story that can trigger the right part of the brain cuts through that clutter and makes that real connection with your audience.
Have you got some examples in mind of things clients of yours have done, or global brands that are out there advertising these days? Who's telling
Yeah.
stories well?
Well, let me give you a classic example. After World War II, the car industry was going great, but pretty much they had sold as many cars as they wanted to. They realized they needed people to use their cars more, to go through them more. So of course Chevy came up with one of the great advertising campaigns is "See the USA" in your Chevrolet.
And put miles on the tires
put
and miles on the engine.
Exactly, to use up the car quicker, because up to that time people were just using their cars for errands.
And that's a great tagline. How did it end up becoming a story, or what about it qualifies it as a story and makes it germane to this conversation?
Well, what qualifies that as a story is you can imagine yourself, see the USA. Okay, now what just popped into your brain?
A little car moving across a map,
Maybe
right?
the Grand Canyon, taking family vacations. There was this whole big marketing campaign about getting people to have an experience of being with family, exploring, etc., but it could only be done with the Chevrolet. And that's what Story First Marketing is.
And of course, the ad included not just that tagline, but also pictures of happy moms and dads with kids in the
Absolutely.
back seat.
Absolutely.
This is before the days of iPads and videos in cars. So everybody had to be kind of watching the scenery and seeing the USA.
Exactly, and it was all about triggering that experiential part of your brain, that aspirational of, oh, I could see myself doing that.
So for the folks who are watching us, it's not just that you have to tell a story that sounds like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's that you're building a storyline in the audience's mind. You're inviting them to become
Absolutely.
part of it.
Now, the interesting thing about the brain is that if you describe a smell, it's almost the same as smelling the smell. So if I say to you, if I say to your audience, think about the aroma of a chocolate chip cookie and how warm and gooey that is. All right, who's mouth watering?
Mm-hmm.
You and you and
yeah,
you,
yeah,
right?
yeah, all y'all.
Yeah, so that's the important thing, especially as entrepreneurs and as business people, is we have to create these aspirational stories in our customers' minds, and also the people that we're pitching to, the investors, but most importantly, our own company and the people we're working with. Because if we don't have that buy-in through story, our company can really get off track. We get involved in, what's my budget, what's this, what's that, but if a really good story will keep everybody on track, it's a guiding principle, and it's a North Star.
When I'm leading my seminars for corporate or nonprofit clients, or I think in one of our prior influencer series on Founders Live, I've talked about the essential elements of a story. You've got a hero, you've got a beginning, middle, and end, you've got some situation that gets complicated. I'd love to hear you talk about it, because while I try and cover a broad swath of message creation and public speaking, you've gone so deep on stories. Share with our watchers what they need to do to build a story, what they have to have in mind.
A story is very, very simple. In fact, people turn it into something that's not simple. Basically, it's context, that is the way things are, a complication, and then the result of that complication, but most importantly, the lesson that's learned out of that.
So we've both worked with corporate and nonprofit executives. We both work with rank and file folks who are thinking about how they're going to advance their career and what role being a better communicator is going to play in that. And of course, our audience for Founders Live is folks who have started companies and folks who they have that entrepreneurial bent. So they may have a great idea, and maybe they're a technical founder, or maybe they've got some idea and they're still working out some of the kinks. But when they're getting ready to pitch,
Yes.
or they're getting ready to sell someone on the idea of joining their company, or investing in their company, or buying the beta model, they're going to want to put together a story. Give me a couple of thoughts on where does someone start to build his or her story?
Well, pretty much you have to start on what got you excited to begin with. And frequently what happens is we get these great ideas, we know how we're going to change the world, and we sort of write that idea down, and then we get involved with who? The financial people, the lawyers, right? All the left brain people. And by the time we get to the pitch, we're like, well, my business plan is this, and I'm going to spend this kind of money, and because we're pitching to humans, they fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw a great pitch.
You're suggesting that lawyers and money people are not human. Is that what I hear you saying?
No, I'm saying they're human.
But they're left brain.
But they're left brain.
Got it.
And you have to feed both parts of the brain.
Yes.
And I think in when we pitch, we're so focused on the left part of the brain that we forget the right part of the brain. And that's so important, because if we're not connecting with somebody, the data doesn't matter. But the best pitch I ever heard was somebody who talked about going to China and finding just the right tea, and he spent 3 years traveling through China, right? And he came out with the perfect leaf that he needed, and he figured out the best way to brew it, et cetera, et cetera. And he had everybody spellbound in the entire room, right? Because everyone was listening to the story.
Right.
Well, at that point, you knew that he had credibility because he'd done his homework. You knew that he loved what he was doing enough to travel to China for 3 years. You could, just the way he described the tea, it triggered our experiential senses, and we knew what that was going to be.
Heat.
Right. And the character, you knew that he really loved tea, and it wasn't making this sort of quick amount of money. It was all about bringing this tea experience to everybody. And then at the end, he said, and this is the price I can get it for, and this is how I'm going to distribute it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He won the pitch.
So, not a classic Goldilocks and the Three Bears kind of story, a personal story, a story rooted in why this was emotionally a business that this person just felt compelled to do. And by sucking people in with that personal narrative, it earned him the right to go further and say, and here's the pricing I can get, and here's the margins I can keep, and here's the distribution channels that I can use, and here's what we envision the market will look like.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
And it is brilliant, but I really want to caution people, it's not about creating a lie type story. It's about creating an authentic story from your heart.
Brad, I hear it's a lot about trust. How does one go about building trust with an audience?
Oh, thank you, Bryan. It's absolutely about trust and credibility. People are looking for these character revealing moments, and you really need to have those. As an example, Southwest Airlines. I love flying Southwest Airlines. I know that people are going to be friendly to me, things are going to be on time. If I have a problem with my ticket, they'll fix the ticket, et cetera, et cetera. So when Southwest Airlines has a problem, I am willing to forgive them because they have built that trust and that credibility up with me. Now, speaking of airlines, we may have heard about another airline that had a character revealing moment, and that would be United Airlines. And because of the previous stories that United has built up around customer service, when something goes wrong, that character revealing moment says to people, oh, I knew they were like that. And the result, of course, is their stock price drops 20% in a night.
We've talked about building trust and building credibility. I think it's clear to our audience that we trust one another and we're credible with each other. We've had this conversation many times, sometimes with a pint or two in front of us and a good meal.
Absolutely.
I think both of us could talk for a good long time about presentation skills, storytelling ability, and how stories really get and connection made between an audience and a speaker.
Yeah.
That said, this is Founders Live. We only have so much time. How would people get in touch with you if they wanted to dig a little bit deeper and have you work with them on their stories?
Absolutely. I love bringing those stories out of people and companies to really bring that out and make things sing so they can make a difference in the world. You can reach me through my website, storyfirstmarketing.com, or contact me directly at brad@cochrane.net. And I love storytelling. I love championing storytelling because I really believe that it can change how people think, feel, and most importantly, act.
Great, and it's all about getting that connection with the audience and driving someone to take an action. You can also find Brad's book, Story First Marketing, and the companion workbook on Amazon.com or through his site at storyfirstmarketing.com. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, and please come to one of my workshops.
Thanks to all of you for joining us for another in the Founders Live Influencer series. It's a pleasure to bring you the fourth Friday of every month a new piece on how to build a message, tell a story, and deliver it well with public speaking. My special thanks to Brad Cochran for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed watching our conversation as much as he and I enjoyed having it. My thanks as well to Atlas Workbase for once again hosting the team that put this video together for you. Atlas is right at the bottom of Queen Anne Hill at 5th and Mercer, right by South Lake Union, easy to get to downtown or Belltown, and just a stone's throw from the entrance to I-5 and near the entrance to I-520. So great location, super place to work. I recommend you check them out. Thanks. We'll see you next month on the fourth Friday of July.